starting the Parashat Bo with Or HaChaim. And the first pasuk I picked is pasuk number 22, chapter 10, if you want to follow. And it says there, and Moshe stretched forth his hand towards the Shemayim. So the question that is being asked is, Or HaChaim says, we need to understand why, in the context of the preceding Makkah, which was locusts, even though Hashem told Moshe, stretch out your hand, when it comes to the action, it says, and Moshe stretched his staff, right? Not his hand. And he says, if we look in description of other Makkahs, we're not going to find a single one in the Torah that says that he stretched out his hand and then the Makkah happened, right? It's always the staff. But suddenly here, when it comes to Choshech, the terminology changes, and it says that he actually stretched forth his hand. So the obvious question is why we departed from the normal way of how it was said before. So he says maybe it's connected to what the Midrash says, and Midrash says that the darkness that covered Mitzrayim was from the darkness that is described in Tehillim, where David HaMelech says that Hashem made darkness his concealment, right? Like a shelter around him. So it's not just any old darkness, which would be like just the lack of light or whatever. It's this special darkness that in the spiritual realms plays a special role of this concealing fabric or mechanism that hides Hashem from creation, or maybe you could say that shields creation from Hashem, right? Because obviously Hashem is too intense for the created beings or creation as a whole to interact with him directly. It would be overwhelming. So it says accordingly, Moshe obviously realized that, and he decided that it would be more respectful to stretch out because he's got to stretch out something. Hashem told him, stretch out your hand. And he's normally, up until this moment, that meant stretch out your staff. But he realized that this, it would be like taking a stick and sticking it into, the Choshech. But since this was no ordinary Choshech, but it had this special, holy Choshech that comes from very special area in Shemayim, wouldn't be respectful to stick it was the staff. And so he decided that in this case, it must be literally with the hand, because to show respect to it and to also to underline the idea that this is no ordinary Choshech that we're talking about. And he says, one could ask, how about the other Midrash that says that the darkness that enveloped Egypt was a darkness from Gehenna? So that's a different kind of darkness. So it almost sounds like there are two Midrashim, and both from Midrash Shmot Rabbah, they contradict each other. He says, no, there's no contradiction. He says both of them are true. Why? Because we know from Chazal that apparently there were two stages in the Makat Choshech, two different types of darkness. There were 3 days when it was absolute darkness in a sense of absolute absence of light, when it says that a man could not see his brother, right? Like people even right next to each other wouldn't be able to see each other. And the example I always give is that, how a lot of times when you go on a tour in some cave, and at some point the guide will tell you, everybody please turn off your cell phones, and it turns off the light that the cave may have installed in it, right, for safety reasons and make it easy to go through it. right? And when there's no cell phones, no cave lights, no nothing, right? You get to experience practically absolute darkness, right? Because you're deep underground with hundreds of feet of rock between you and the light outside, and there's nothing electrical or whatever turned on, right? And it's really, really dark, right? It's different from the darkness you have in your bedroom when you wake up at night, right? You open your eyes at first, you can't see anything, but then you let your eyes get used to it, and you start seeing, the objects in your room. At least there are silhouettes, and because your room is not absolutely hermetically protected from light, right? There's actually a street light, and maybe there's the moon and something else or whatever, and it all creeps in through the even if you have curtains, but the curtains are not flush against the windows, and even if they are, a little bit of light will still go through the curtain, so on and so forth, right? So you never really experience absolute darkness normally in your normal life, right? But the closest we get to it is, like I said, you go on a tour in a cave, they turn everything off, and then you get to see where you can wave the hand in front of your face and you don't see it, right? So he says one midrash is talking about that kind of darkness. When Hashem made it so that no light would go into where the Egyptians are, he would shield all external light from penetrating their homes and so on and so forth. But that was the first 3 days. And then we read about the different kind of darkness, which was palpable. And it says that when that darkness came for another 3 days, whatever body position a person was in at the moment that second darkness came, right, they were pretty much stuck in it, right? Because the darkness was like viscous, right? It had thickness to it, and it would prevent you from even being able to move, right? So for 3 days, the Mitzrim were basically, if you had your foot raised and your hand this way and your head this way, you were stuck like this for 3 days. And guess what? If you needed to go to the bathroom, too bad. That's how you were, that's just how it was. And it was very appropriate, and it was very fair, because people that enslaved other people and told everybody what to do and not to do, that for the next 16 hours you're going to be carrying bricks up the stairs just because they said so, right? So they basically deprived other people from freedom of movement and did all kinds of bad things to other people physically. Hashem said, now I'm going to deprive you of the freedom of physical movement. And, when you experience the lack of basic function that you used to as a given, right? That really strikes, home, because, not until your nose is all clogged up that you appreciate the basic wonderfulness of being able to breathe through it. Once you have cold, and something as simple as breathing through your nose becomes a hot commodity all of a sudden. Now you appreciate it, right? So, but anyway, so he says that this is what it is, right? That there were 2 different kinds of darkness. There was the darkness that was absolute absence of light, and they couldn't see anything. And then there was the darkness that was palpable and pretty darkness froze them as they were in their place. And this other type of darkness, right? This type of darkness, that was a special darkness that is used to conceal the godliness from creation. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to show the special kavod, special respect to this second type of darkness. And just to continue this theme of light and darkness,